let's start with our panelists and to get to know them a little bit. So here's what I'd like to know. And Annie, we're going to start with you. You tell us your name, how many gatherings you've been to, and maybe a favorite gathering story you've had.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Annie Tyberg, and I am the DCE here at Christ Greenfield in Gilbert, Arizona. This will be my 7th gathering. My first one, I went as a student and then a young adult volunteer, and then all of the 4, and now this 5th one since with leading students. My favorite story, my favorite aspect of the gathering, to be entirely honest, are the mass events. And I'll never forget one of the gatherings. I want to say it was one of the ones in New Orleans. And one of my kids, one of my young ladies came up to me and was like, "Are there really this many Lutherans in the world?" And I was like, "There are so many more." But it was so cool just to hear her reaction, just to looking at the mass scale of all of us together praising Jesus in that stadium. So, hi.
That's great. Oh, we got them all right here.
Right? I know. Like, there's a lot more than just this.
That's good. Ryan, let's go to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Strelo from Grace Lutheran in Pocatello, Idaho. This will be my 5th gathering. I've gone as a participant, a field worker, and then 2 as DCE, 1 in Alaska and 1 here in Idaho. And I've taken groups as small as 2, and this year I'll be taking a group of 25. So this will kind of be, I kind of spread the gamut as far as size and distance as well. So favorite memory for me, this is what I always tell the kids when I'm trying to get them to come is, when I was a participant, it was Orlando. And I remember coming down the escalator to get into the mass worship area. And I had kind of that moment that Annie was just talking about as well. You know, and I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where there's a Lutheran church on every street corner. And I still was shocked at how many other high schoolers believed what I believed. And so for me, that is by far the greatest memory that I'll ever have. It was, to me, it was a picture of heaven when I came down that escalator.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Shirley, let's go to you. And I'm kind of curious about your answer because I know we've had you speak on the main stage. So I'm curious what your favorite memory is.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear the idea that it's a picture of heaven. I have had that. I never went as a student. My younger brother went when it was in New Orleans. I think I've been in 7 gatherings as a leader or presenter, but I can remember standing on the stage when the auditorium was empty, the dome was empty, feeling terrified. And then I can remember standing on stage, knowing how many people from my home church, from other colleagues that I work with, you know, it felt like heaven. It wasn't scary. I mean, I'm sure I was still scared, but it was this awesome picture of, oh gosh, someday this is what heaven's going to be like. And it's this incredible moment. I think my favorite story from gathering experience as a leader is the same. I encounter it every time when you take all these students from all their different walks of life, whatever their background would be, and they connect with someone or something from the main stage or being in worship. Last time it was, we sang a song in worship. It was, I don't remember exactly what the song was. It was a hymn. And my kids are all praise band kids. You know, they all want the latest and greatest song. I looked over and I saw this boy, as a junior in high school, crying. And I knew he was feeling that same connection to the rest of the group, the rest of the collective group. And I just love that moment when the kid realizes this is bigger than me. So that was really cool. Yeah.
That's so great. We hear that story a lot, that they're part of something bigger than themselves, which, yeah, it's a significant thing. So thanks. So here's what we're doing today a little bit. The day we're really talking about the gathering schedule and what the gathering schedule looks like. And so I'm going to start off in just a second here. We're going to do kind of the gathering schedule reveal. every gathering, the schedule changes or shifts a little bit depending on times and some of the factors of a city. And so there's certainly things that have shifted within this gathering. You'll also notice there's some language shifts. We've talked about that on some past webinars, that there'll be some new language that you'll get used to as we kind of go through that. And then as we talk through that and all the different things that kind of come, then we're going to come back to Annie and Ryan and Shelley and say, okay, as you've led groups, how do you manage different aspects of that? So we'll get to some of the specifics of that. But we want to start with kind of revealing the schedule so you get a sense of that. And like Meredith said, as you have a question, type that in the box, because we want to make sure to get to your questions first and foremost. So Meredith, once you put the gathering schedule on, we'll talk a little bit about just kind of the overall, what does that look like, so that you can get a sense of what that, what those 5 days are framed like. So we'll get that. Okay, excellent. So for a lot of people we know, and we've seen this probably a little bit of an increase on this each gathering, that people are coming in a day early. And what we've done is to help give you a little bit more time and space, we've actually brought the registration times earlier into Wednesday, the 10th. So if you're coming in, a lot of times you have to wait till the afternoon. We're bringing that into the morning to give you more space and variety and options. So from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., there's early registration. There's going to be more information on what does that look like coming in the next couple of months. So you can expect that. But you know that you can come earlier if you want to do that and get your group registered. On Thursday, once again, 8 to 6 o'clock, registration is going to be down at the convention center, so you'll have a chance to do that. Also, there'll be orientation sessions. If I know several of you said this is your first time or your second time, I would highly recommend anyone that hasn't been or has been to 3 or less gatherings as an adult leader to go to those orientation sessions. Of course, we want all adults to go to them. But those are just really great opportunities to hear all the last second key informational things. Gatherings and cities always shift little bits and pieces here right up to the gathering day. So this gives you a chance to get the latest and greatest information. And then also for us is to help you navigate some of the first couple of moments of the gathering. So always encourage you to go to an orientation session. You're going to hear us say this a lot. Every district has or most districts have some kind of an event. And so they'll be scheduled throughout the 5 days. A lot of them are kind of towards the supper time, or a few I know are post mass events. But we want to make sure that you check out with your district coordinator what that event is. We highly suggest that you go to those. It's just a great way to connect with your district and the people that you serve with. The other thing, and you're going to hear a lot more about this next month in the webinar when we talk about food options, because we know that's a complication. Anytime you bring 20,000 people to a city, particularly with a youth taste buds, it is difficult to feed everybody. So we have been working hard at some different options there, and we're really excited next month to reveal some of the options that we have for you as leaders to make that easier and more manageable. So make sure you come back and learn more about that next month. Mass event warm-up. So typically, some people say, well, it always says 8:30 the mass event starts. But we always do a warm-up about a half an hour. This year it's going to be 40 minutes before, where the band plays a little bit more as people are coming into the dome. So at 7:50 is the warm-up, and really encourage you to be inside at that point. We're going to tell you more about kind of the entrance into the stadium and what does that look like, floor seating, different sections. We've got more of that coming into webinars. I think it's March, if I remember right, but we'll concentrate more on that in upcoming webinars. And then really the mass events go for about an hour and a half, and you already heard from our panelists who said how significant that is for their group. So 8:30 to 10 o'clock, you can slot that into your schedules. And then at 10:15 on the first 3 nights, we do what's called a Mass Event Plus. It's an optional event for those that want to stay, but typically we'll bring in a band, which we will reveal. I believe that's in March. We'll bring in a band or an entertainment, some kind of a form. And some groups stay and some people go back to the hotel. It's really your option and what your kids do. Some have half the group that goes back and half the group that stays. It's just another option for you to do. And it helps some of our exiting of the stadium too, of making it a little bit more manageable. Not everybody can get on the metro or the bus and head back. So it kind of helps space that out a little bit. So that's the evening in the first one. The next 3 days are pretty similar. And so I'm going to speak about them kind of in broad terms. Typically starts with an 8 o'clock adult leader morning meeting. There'll be a few that are earlier if you're going on a servant event meeting. Happens in hotels with the CLBs and that. That just helps you once again to know the latest and greatest information. Also a resource for adult leaders to go and talk about if there's something that came up or an issue where you just need a helping voice somewhere in your group. Great opportunity to connect with the CLBs at those meetings. For those that will go on servant event deployment, 8 to 1 o'clock is kind of your time frame on that. There'll be more information coming out on that as you sign up for those. And then this year, our morning sessions are 2 different times, and it's going to depend a little bit about the location of where your hotel is at and some of the transportation stuff. So you're either going to be at the 9 o'clock, which is the first morning session, or you're going to be at the 10:30, which is the second one. And they will happen in 5 different places. One's at the Hilton, one's at the Hyatt, and then the other 3 are at particular rooms in the convention center. They're bigger rooms. So we really highly encourage everyone to be there. And in fact, you'll hear us say this, there are 4 things that we want you to do every day. And we're going to talk about that in a second. That's one of them, is we all start together in Psalms 46 together. And it's a great way to kind of get our day going. For those who are at the 9 o'clock, you'll actually have an extra option. Your day starting a little early. So you'll actually have the extra option of going to an earlier session time, because we know that sessions are a really important thing for a lot of groups and more people wanted options. So we've added a session time for an earlier time at I think it's 10:30 there. And then we have 3 other session times. You see them on the schedule at 12, 2, and 4. One of the things I want to highlight, we've talked about this before, but this year we're doing something new for all adult leaders, and we want at least one person from every youth group, adult leader, to come to the adult featured session. We're going to do 3 main ones on the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Bringing in great speakers, and it's just going to be worth your time. So make sure that one person from your group is at the adult session at 2 o'clock. There'll be more information coming in and webinars coming up too. And then once again, that night routine looks very similar. There's going to be some food options we'll talk about later. At 6 o'clock, the interactive center closes, so all groups are really out of the convention center by that time. And that supper time is a pretty key time. So I know we're going to talk about that a little bit, because that is a stress for a lot of adult leaders of how do we make sure that all our kids get food to eat. So we'll ask our panelists how they take that and work that. Same thing with the night schedule with mass events. They look very much all 3 nights where 7:50 warm up, 8:30. And then for the mass events, and then 10:15 will be a mass event plus. I want to highlight just a couple things on Sunday, because Sunday there's a few different things. So on Sunday there is a 5K run walk. We're still not exactly sure what time that's going to be, but we're pretty certain that's going to be on Sunday morning, and it will be downtown Minneapolis. The other thing just to note on Sunday in particular is, at the evening time, there's no mass event plus on Sunday evening for a variety of reasons. But that's an opportunity for you at that night to go back to the hotel to have a little extra time. It's that last night, and so there's a lot of different things going on. It's a chance for you to prepare for worship with your group. That's the one night that we don't have that. So we'll talk a little later about what does transportation look like on that night. And then, of course, we end the gathering in the best way possible, where we worship together. And so at 9:30 on Monday, we get together, we worship. And then at the end of that, there'll be probably like a 15-minute opportunity for us to do some sendings and some commissionings and those kind of things at the end of the worship service. And typically we're telling most people, I know they ask this for transportation, is really to think about 12 o'clock as the ending time and to schedule things after that. We know with flights and stuff like that, it's not always possible, but we ask you as much as you can to really think about 12 o'clock being an ending time because we have a lot of people with transportation trying to get out as well. So that's just a general overview of the schedule. And typically what we do is we've said this, that there are really 4 things that we want you to do every day. We want you to go to the morning session, which is as we're starting our day in Psalm 46. The second thing we do every day is we go to a stadium event. It's one time where we all come together under one roof. The third thing that we do every day for adults is we go to an adult session. That's kind of a new thing for us that we want to really encourage. And then the fourth thing that we do every day is we do community groups together. And that's a chance for you to get together in your group and process, because we know that the best ministry happens back in your congregation. And so we want to make sure that you have intentional time of creating community together and taking what you've learned from the day and processing that together. Really, really important aspect of the gathering. So those are the 4 things. And then there's lots of options during the day. And we know as leaders that also brings with it some anxiety. So here's what I want to do. Annie, Ryan, and Shelly, you are going to bring your expertise into this, and we're going to ask you a few questions on how do you manage when you have a schedule like this with your group. So let's start with this one. We know there are lots of opportunities for adults and youth during the gathering, and we know that some of the groups run things very different. So some say, hey, we want to get in as much of the activity as we possibly can, and groups can become quite exhausted. And others that kind of slow down and try to help the youth navigate in the slower pace of this. So I just say, when you get a schedule like this, what are some of the lessons that you've learned over the gatherings you've come to, and how to help your youth navigate the pace of the gathering? And let's start, Ryan, let's start with you.
I would say a big piece of it for me is simply just mentally preparing kids for what that is going to feel like when they're there. It's hard to until you're actually in that moment. But I tell them, basically from 9 a.m. until 12 a.m. they're going to be on. We're going to be doing things. And there will be opportunities for them to break away, to sit down and relax a little bit. But all in all, I really try to tell the kids over and over and over again that, we're going to this thing to learn more about our faith, to learn more about God, to learn more about each other. And the best way to do that is to do as much as we possibly can. And so I just spend a lot of time just prepping kids and letting them know, and also telling them that they're not alone too. We as leaders are exhausted and tired and all those other things as well. And that it's part of kind of the group experience of all of us handling that together as well. So just a lot of early preparation, I would say.
Excellent. How about you, Shelly? How do you manage?
Well, I Brian, it was funny when you were talking. I was thinking I did that in the beginning. I was go, and then I had a couple gatherings where I just felt exhausted, and then I all of a sudden could understand how some of my introvert kids or kids that had some other issues that they deal with in their regular life, how they might be feeling. So it's a mix. I think we do a lot of prep ahead of time. We talk a lot. We get the kids those Bible studies, those pre-gathering Bible studies, and opportunities to connect, help the kids to form sort of a cohesive group. So we ask the students to look at the gathering booklet when we arrive to kind of identify which sessions or things they might like. Some sessions are super popular, and so we always ask them to find a couple different things that they would like, or note that they're going to be on more than one day. We have one early night, typically, usually the second night of the gathering, we don't do a mass event plus. Usually in the evenings, we have the group meet together and do highs and lows and pray for one another as that works out. Sometimes that doesn't work out, but usually that happens. But sometimes they're just super tired. we really do as much of the gathering as we can, but sometimes we'll say do the 2 and the 4 session, but maybe have lunch at the 12, or try to hit 2 out of the 3 things. It also helps to be in a servant event because then your days are broken up. Each day just looks a little bit different. And they get a real good mix about what kinds of activities. The gathering's so amazing. There's so many different things to do. Breaking it up seems to help our students with the fatigue, because they're not doing the same things day after day.
Yeah, and before we get to Annie, to your answer, I think one of the things that Shelley and Ryan, both of you point out is, and I love, Shelley, you talked about that too, is sometimes us as leaders, we like to navigate the way that we like to navigate, and that there's a variety of kids that are different than us too. So I love the way you guys talked about that, of considering everybody in your group. And we say this over and over, there's no one right way to do this. And so you're going to hear a variety of ways. It's one of the reasons we do the webinar, just to say, hey, what is your group and what's your pace? And then we really encourage you to do what is best for you and your group. So Annie, how about you?
I would echo what Ryan and Shelley have said, as my echo in my office just turns on. And it basically thinking that the one thing that we do is that I make sure that we have downtime, whatever that might look like throughout the day. I have a large group this year. We have over 60 kids and adults all together. And so I've never led a group this big before. And so I don't know what that's going to look like when it comes to having them making them do their small group time to process. But I agree that there are so many varieties of personalities and introverts and extroverts. I'm an extrovert who I am the fastest walker in my group. And I have always been told, slow down, slow down. And so for me as a leader to remind them, they have to slow down too, to take time to process the gathering. You want to do everything. And I tell them that, yeah, they're going to not be in their hotel room at all during the day. If they're going to have downtime, it's probably somewhere in the convention center with them as a small group or their friends. And so I encourage them to do as much as they can, but it's okay to take a break and take a breath.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Well, one of the things we talked about is right away in the beginning is different people come in at different points of the time. Have you guys, just out of curiosity, how many of you come in like a day early, a day or more early?
I do. Yeah.
All 3 of you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start. Shelley, we'll start with you. Like when you come in a day early, first of all, why do you come in a day early? And then what do you do with that day in helping your kids prepare?
Well, I always come in a day early. The leader that, when I was my very first time, we went with a couple of other churches in my area. They said it's the only way to go. And I think it's right, because I love the gathering itself is this amazing mountaintop experience. But a side piece that's also so neat and cool for the kids is them getting to travel and getting to know the city. Realizing that when they come in and they're a part of that city, there's a ministry that's happening that is super powerful and almost hard to articulate, but they all experience it once they're in there. Every city has its own unique identity, and I think that's really neat too. A lot of this church that I'm in, they have all traveled, but every church previous, when we went to New Orleans, I took like 30 kids. 20 of them had never been on a plane before. So getting to come in and see some of the parts, we went on an alligator tour in New Orleans. We ate some of the food. We did some of those things. That was almost as much of a mind blower as sitting in the dome and being around all those other people. When they got off the plane, a couple of the kids said, oh, we are definitely traveling more. So it had lost, there was no more, we're just going to do a car trip and travel locally. Those kids wanted to show their parents the things they had experienced. I think getting there a day early allows them to acclimate to the time zone, if it's a different time zone, or just to see different things. So I have been looking right now for really neat food places or special things, lakes in Minneapolis, things that you can do, talking with people that are in that area, say, what is the thing you really think people from out of state might want to see, and putting together a little bit of an itinerary. We're doing a red eye, so we'll be building a pretty busy day in and then making it an early day before the gathering starts. So I'm really excited about coming in a day early.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So Annie, how about you? When you come in a day early, what does your day look like for your group?
We usually do the same thing as Shelly does, in the sense that that's our fun day, to do something fun and different. The one thing that we're doing this year is we're flying in on the 10th, and then making the 11th our fun day. So it's really not a full day before the gathering, but part of that was just flights from Arizona. And like Shelly, coming from the West Coast, it's always easier to fly in a day early to let your kids acclimate to the time zone. And honestly, I let them sleep in a little bit longer that next day, the first day, because you want them to start off rested. If they're already starting off exhausted, your gathering is going to be terrible, because they're all going to be cranky and you're going to be cranky too. So you want rested kids that first day. And then that also builds the excitement then too. So my kids, it's funny, Shelly, I really can't wait to see your itinerary, because we might join you on that. Because the only fun thing that my kids keep talking about is the Mall of America. And I'm like, it's a mall. It is great. It's giant, but it's still a mall with all the same stores. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see some of the fun options that people are doing, because that's really a day that you might have the freedom to do that.
Yeah, and we are assuming, and we've heard this from a lot of groups too, that that first day, either the day they come in on that Wednesday or even that Thursday, are probably going to be two really big gathering participant days at the mall. A lot of people doing that, or that Monday. Some people are staying late too. So just keep that in mind as well.
Yeah.
Ryan, how about you?
So I actually prefer to stay later because I don't like to fight people at the airport. This year, it'll be my first time coming early, just with scheduling. And we're actually coming in on the 9th. And so we're even a little bit earlier. And the biggest reason for that for me is coming from Alaska and now Idaho. We're spending a considerable amount of money per kid to get there. And so the way that I talk to parents about it is, for roughly 50 or 60 more dollars per day, your kid can have a little bit more fun. And so we say, if we're going to spend this much money to go there, let's really get the biggest bang for our buck and do it that way. And so, on that first day, we're actually going to go to the Mall of America, and we're going to spend a lot of time there. But we're going to have different group check-in moments. Like there's plenty of like massive interactive things to do there. And so we might do like an escape the room together at 2:00, and then we'll meet for dinner at 6:00. And then, for the kids that I believe in, I'll let them go off and have some time. I'm together alone, and things like that. And then the next day we're going to go to the amusement park just outside of the town. And then on the 11th, I am going to do what Annie said and just let them sleep in a little bit longer and kind of have a slower day, maybe stick around the hotel a little bit to get them ready for that experience. But for us, it's a matter of if we're going to spend that much resource getting there, that we want to make sure that they really experience all of it.
Derek, can I jump in real quick and say,
Absolutely.
Even as we're having this webinar, I see people popping in and sharing ideas, and thank you, keep those coming. But I was going to say, a lot of the itinerary ideas, if you're a person who is leading a group for the first time, or you haven't led groups in a while, or you're new to your church or whatever, there's all sorts of wonderful and creative ideas floating around on the NYG leaders page. And even here, like, I didn't know the Mall of America offers a scavenger hunt, and I had been thinking the other day, oh, that would be really cool that maybe we could do something. And I thought maybe that would be a really bad idea. But if they know that that's going to happen and they have something set up, I mean, it's a wonderful resource to share with others ahead of the gathering. And I think that does really enhance the leaders gathering experience too, because you really begin to develop some relationships, and then you're having those same like, oh, I've been talking to you online, it's so nice to meet you moments at the gathering, which I think is really special.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I know a lot of people use that adult leader Facebook page for that very thing of saying, has anyone, we're thinking about this, has anyone experienced that? Same thing with the chat box here, right? It gives us a chance to kind of collaborate together and have a really good experience. And even Roy's made this comment, I think it's a really good thing. It's important you have so many people coming to this to do some pre-planning on that and to have a really good game plan coming into that. And I know all three of you have said that. Know kind of what your day is going to look like, because it's so easy it's just not a flexible type environment in that. Ryan, do you have something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say too that I give my kids like I'll put together 8 or 10 options before we head there too, and kind of get a survey. And I do ultimately have that decision making power, but I do try to get a wide survey of what kids are looking to do as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, for someone who lives in Minneapolis, maybe spending a lot of time at Mall of America sounds terrible, but for kids from Pocatello, Idaho, a mall that big is mind-boggling to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's just being intentional about reading your group as well and knowing what they want from the experience as well.
For sure. And I think for us too, if I can pipe in a little bit, that we're staying an extra day and a half. We don't fly out until the 16th to be able to have that time to process the gathering, and understand, because Ryan, I get you, I hate fighting in the airport. And after last time where we got delayed in the airport in New Orleans, never again. But it's one of those things where I think that you can add so much fun just by having that time with your group at the end of the trip too, to say, okay, now what did you learn? What did you learn? And what are you going to do with this when we get home?
That's good.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I just want to say, and I know several people are saying, hey, some people like the mall, some people don't like the mall, and we totally get that. Know your group and what your group has. If you're from a big city, it's got the lakes. Sometimes is a great opportunity. They have so many opportunities. So look for those experiences that are kind of unique to your group. And if you have any questions, once again, go to that Facebook page and say, I'm looking for some kind of experience like this to get them a different perspective. I think the other side of it too, we've talked about this before, is it has a great diverse neighborhood area in the Phillips. And it's a really good opportunity as well to head to the global market. So lots of different things. Let's do this. Have any of you brought in groups the day of the gathering? Like the very first day would be the Thursday on this one. Anyone done that?
When I was a participant, I came in the day of, but that was a while ago.
Anything, Ryan, you remember about that?
I remember that it was very quick, which is what had kind of curved my decision to either come a day early or stay a day late, because it was such a massive thing, and yet we were home 5 days later. And so it just, for me, it felt odd, I guess, to have such a massive culminating life-changing thing happen, because quite honestly for me, I became a DCE because of the National Youth Gathering, and so it really sculpted kind of how I lead these groups now. So
that's great.
Yeah.
And we've heard from some people too, just I think when they come the day of, it does feel very rushed to get everything in and register and all those kind of things. So just keep that in mind if you're coming the day of. I can't remember who said it, but one of you said that too, how important it is to start the gathering rested and to make sure that your kids get a good night's sleep, because if they're tired coming in, it can set the whole gathering that way, because it's an exhausting experience. So yeah, let's do this. We're gonna break the schedule down into 3 components. Okay, the morning, afternoon, and evening, if we can do it that way. So I'm gonna start with we'll start, Ryan, we're gonna start with you this time. And let's talk about the morning. Yeah, how do you structure your morning with your groups, as far anything from like time getting up, and what does that look like?
So this is a kind of a moment where I try to let kids sleep as much as possible, because we usually are up later, because like Shelly said as well, we do debrief every night. Even after we do a mass event plus or go to a hotel and do something. So sometimes we are up until 1 o'clock in the morning. And so I try to give them every opportunity. I think we're talking about food later, but I do go out and get some breakfast options in case our hotel isn't offering it, or, with that many people in a hotel, sometimes breakfast downstairs just doesn't always work out. And so I usually have some grab and go options in my room that I hand out to kids for breakfast. We make lunches and take sack lunches. And so we do that as well. And then we head off to the center for our morning session. As far as afternoon goes, we spend as much time with speakers as we can. I usually require 3 out of 4 sessions, and then the other one they're in that interactive session. I just don't want to see them sitting around on their phones, in the middle of the hallway, just hanging out. So I do require them to be at 3 of the 4, and then they can take 1 off, but have to spend it in the interactive session. The late afternoon is kind of where we get our break. And I learned this life hack from a webinar, the last gathering, which is we do not go out to dinner anywhere. We actually go back to our hotel, and I either pick up food from a local restaurant to go, or I actually contact a catering company and they bring the food to our hotel. And I did that with groups as small as 5 people. So you don't have to be a large group to get a catering company to send you food. And so for us, that was an amazing thing for us at the last gathering, to come home, especially in New Orleans, to grab a shower and to just kind of relax for a little bit before we headed off to the mass event that evening. I am not super worried about where we sit in the mass event. And so I prefer to not be super bottlenecked. And I just kind of tell kids that, and it sounds like you guys have a plan for that, but we don't show up too crazy early to catch seats. And so we show up a little bit later to just ease that kind of tension of heading into the mass event. So we get anywhere from around 2 hours probably of downtime in the hotel in the afternoon to eat. And I mean, if kids even want to jump in the pool, sometimes we have that option. So
that's great. And we're going to talk a little bit more about food in particular, because we know, and several people have mentioned that too, how significant that is in a schedule. In fact, there were a couple comments here even talking about coming in the day of. The day of is not so bad. But I think the thing that they said is just make sure you create extra space, and so you don't rush. And I think that probably goes throughout the whole gathering. Everything takes a little longer than you think it will. So always add on a little extra time to things, and eating especially is one of those situations. So Annie, let's go to you and talk just to how do you kind of structure your day, and we'll go the morning, kind of afternoon, up kind of through that supper time.
Yeah, so for us, I would say that one of the biggest things that I've learned over the gatherings is that you have to eat breakfast. I have a lot of my kids that don't really eat breakfast. I'm not a huge breakfast eater. I'm a coffee drinker. And, thankfully, we've always been at a hotel that has a Starbucks. But that's never guaranteed. And the line is ridiculously long every time. But one thing that I've learned too with Ryan is that I always have some grab and go options in my room. Last time coming from Arizona, I had an extra suitcase. I love Southwest because they allowed you 2 suitcases for free. One entire suitcase was just filled with snacks, granola bars, some fruit, different stuff that we could then have that I didn't have to rush or go find a grocery store the day of or that morning. And then I sent some of my leaders to go get some water bottles or orange juice or milk or whatever, or cream cheese if we had bagels. One kid this time wants me to bring a toaster. I haven't decided on that yet. He's like, if you're going to bring a toaster, if you're going to bring bagels, you got to have a toaster. But it's all about breakfast, because with all the walking that you do, I found that a lot of my kids were getting sick throughout the day. And even by like lunchtime, they were dehydrated because not only were they not drinking, but they weren't eating. And so because with all the walking and then the humidity, because Minneapolis does have a lot of humidity, it's the land of 10,000 lakes. It's not going to be as humid as New Orleans on the Gulf, but it's not a walk in the park. It's not California. And so I think that making sure that you eat breakfast, keep your kids hydrated. This time, one of the things that I'm requiring on our packing list is a water bottle that they have to refill throughout the day. I don't want to have to buy water bottles. You should bring your own. And in Arizona, we do that all the time here anyway. Mm-hmm. For lunchtime, I think that I let them go really wherever they want, usually within the convention center or nearby are their food options, but I let them do it in their small group. That's a time for them to connect with their small group leader to process what they're doing throughout the day. one of the things I've learned as managing a big group is that I can't know where they all are going to be at any time in the day, but their small group leaders can. They're an extension of me, and they're kind of the mom or the dad of their group, and they're the ones that hold them accountable to making sure that they go to the sessions. I think, I'm trying to remember what my guideline was last year. I think last year it was they had to go to 2 of 3 sessions, but I think there were 4 sessions, so it must have been 3 out of the 4. And then I encourage them to use that downtime, that fourth, whatever the time that they choose, to go to the interactive center or to make that their connection time with their small group. I really insist that they have time at least some point during the day that their small group collectively talks about, and that they have that time to process what they're learning. They talk their highs and lows. It's easier to do that during the day than at the end of the night when you're all tired. And for us in a big group, there's nowhere for us to meet. And so I found that if you just find a spot or a corner in the convention center, that's easier for you, and go for it. If you have to do it at night, that's fine, but you're gonna be inconveniencing your other roommates or your other adults or whatever, trying to find that spot to do it. Yeah, and then afternoon, I just encourage them to go to as many of the sessions as they want. In the convention center, I have a rule, and I think we're gonna get to this if we have time. I have a rule that they need to be in a group of 3. But at the same time, knowing that the convention center is relatively controlled, I'm okay if they're in a group of 2, as long as their small group leader knows where they are. And their small group leader, it's really their job, their role, to know where their kids are. If there's one kid that wants to go to one session and none of their friends want to go to it, that's their small group leader's role, is to go with them and to connect with them and make sure that they're, number one, that they are where they said they were going to be. But number 2, that they're learning something and that they have someone that they don't feel like they're alone. I think it really depends on how much you trust your kids, what your rules are in the convention center, based on if you allow them to have 2 or 3 or whatever. My rules out in the city are just that if at any time they're out in the city, they have to be in a group of 3 and they have to be with an adult, just for the sake of safety. But that's kind of how we do it until dinner. And then for us being a large group dinner, it's a whole different bucket.
Yeah, I want to, there are a couple comments I want to come back to on here. One of them, by the way, Kurt says, Annie, buy the toaster, for heaven's sakes. You can do it in America. If it's a financial thing, we know some people in Minneapolis. We'll get you a toaster, okay? We'll figure that out. The other thing, one of the questions that came in, which is a good one, right? The Skyway system has a lot of different options. It's got, for Annie, a Caribou or a Starbucks, literally every couple of Skyway passes. Will those be open on the weekend? We are definitely working with the city, but I would not necessarily count on that. That's just not the rhythm downtown. Pretty much downtown shuts down and they go to the lakes and the summertime. So we're working with them, but it's not their rhythm. And there'll probably be some that will be open, and we'll help guide that. But even during the Super Bowl, most of the Skyway was closed. There weren't a lot of places to eat. So anyway, there'll be some more updates on that. And then a lot of you are writing down different things you do. Please continue to do that. That's really good. That helps us all learn from each other. So that's great. Let's go. Shelly, I'm sorry, we haven't gotten to you yet.
That's okay. A lot of people I can see a lot of the comments, pretty much the same thing. I do a per diem envelope. I usually have one adult leader that is in charge of our food options. We kind of do a little bit of pre-planning. I don't know if we'll do this in Minneapolis. I think we will, but again, like you said, it's a little bit different. Their rhythm's a little bit different, but we ask the kids to sort of vote on what options they like the most. We call ahead. We ask them to reserve a room if there's a restaurant that we can all eat in. I love the sort of bringing it to you idea. That was a great idea. I hadn't known about, but we would in New Orleans go to a different, like, local restaurant, not a Burger King or something like that. It was local to that area food. And the kids at first were like, no, but they really ended up loving that. And again, growing their palate. I think students learn in lots of different ways. So I know for sure that some students have a tougher time sitting in the auditorium, no matter how engaging the breakout speakers are, and they are. So mixed in with that, I would say if the student says, I really want to go see this band or this comedian, or I want to go to this art experience, that counted for me. I wanted them to be able to have all those experiences that they could have. I've not really had any problem with students just flaking out and not wanting to go. I think Ryan said earlier, I think it was you, Ryan, that said, coming from so far, there's a lot of resourcing and a lot of work that's gone into getting them here. So when they get there, they might be tired, but they're not just wanting to bug out and do nothing. Although, that could that will happen a lot this time. I don't know. Every gathering has its own flavor. I do love the idea you said, Annie, about having the kids do their highs and lows during the day. I have a couple kids this particular time where they're taking medicine for migraines, therefore sleep is more of an option. So staying up until 2 will probably not work. So that's a great option. But I think the per diem helps it be more in their control. They know how much they have to spend for that, and then dinner is as a group.
Excellent. And so here's what I want to actually spend a little bit more time on the food thing, because I think it's probably one of the questions that we get the most of. And I love the power and the influence of this group. But you have influenced Annie, and she is promising her kids a toaster. So her kids are going to be so excited. Man, it's going to change their gathering. It'll be fantastic. But we have some really exciting food options that are going to help with that we've got coming up next month, as I said. But how do you guys handle that? Because it's really, especially think about the lunchtime, right? So you got sessions that go on every 2 hours. There's a different session that's going on. And so how do you tell your kids to make sure they eat? Because several of you mentioned that's an issue, that some kids just don't eat because they're trying to get everything in. How do you manage both the lunch and then as a group, how do you handle, some of you have said this already, but how do you handle supper time knowing that it takes so long to get a group through?
We have the kids figure out what they want for their lunch, and then one of our leaders go, like what Ryan was saying, one of the leaders will go and bring that back. And so there's a meetup spot, they pick up their lunch. Usually it's a grab and go type of thing. And we had them eat it in the convention center last time, and that worked out really well. Dinner was a little bit harder, and there was a little bit more of a nervousness about getting to the mass event. They did something neat with the mass event seating last time, which helped our group, I think, let go of some of we have to be sitting in a certain spot. They kind of move people around each way, and I thought that worked really nicely. I think having someone do some pre-planning ahead of time, if you're getting ready for the gathering right now, getting a sense of what your limitations might be. We might have vegans or gluten-free kids or things like that. If they can ahead of time plan what they're going to do, a lot of my students have that anxiety about what's going to come next. And so having some of those control things handled doesn't super make sense to me. I don't have that, but I know this generation, at least where I served, at all the places I've served, it's just been a growing concern. So having them have a little more control over where and how and when, even to their water bottle. They all want to bring their Hydro Flask. They're looking for stickers to put on their Hydro Flask, so they have that, and it reminds them to drink the water. Keeping it in their control has been helpful, I think.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that, just in the sense that I allow them as much say in our decisions of how we structure our day as possible. The more that they own the trip, the more that they're going to be engaged and want to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah,
Ryan?
I'd say for us, for food, I have probably gotten fairly lucky in our rooms where I have had a fridge in most of our rooms in previous years. And so that's a large help to me, but I have basically just committed to, if I have to wake up at 6 a.m. and go to the grocery store and get lunch or breakfast, then that's what I'm going to do. But we do pack sack lunches. That's the easiest for us. I basically work on a $20 a day for kids for food. So I say $3 for breakfast, $7 for lunch, and 10 for dinner. And 3 is possible when it's a granola bar and a piece of fruit, and 7 is definitely possible when it's PB&J and chips and a cookie and a water bottle for lunch. And 10 isn't really, but when I make up money on 3 and 7, then dinner's okay. So, and we did, in New Orleans, I did go to local places and get different foods and stuff like that. This year, I think that I am just going to go with one catering company and just have them deliver us food every single night, but just give different options as well along with that. And I primarily just look out for, you know, like vegetarian, or Shelly, you said vegan, or also specifically like any allergies, of course. I always look out for that. But other than that, I do kind of make some decisions for them, and that's what happens. The one caveat to that is I do try to find a nicer local restaurant one night, and I give the kids a much larger budget to eat that night, and that's kind of their fancy dinner for the trip. And so some of them spend, you know, like $20 at dinner that night, because that's also probably something that they haven't experienced before. And there's plenty of picky eaters that make up for the $20 that kids spend because they just want an $8 cheeseburger anyways. So that's kind of one addendum to that I do. I try to do it either before or after everybody has left the city or not arrived yet. So, but as far as food goes, the last gathering was the first that I had done that catering option, and that for me was awesome. It was great.
And just wait, Ryan, till next month when we reveal. It's going to be so exciting. But it'll have some options that are going to help, I think, group leaders. So we're excited about that. So great. I want to cover two more pretty quick things, because I know we got about 6 minutes left. So I want to cover two things really quickly. I do want to address one thing. I know Donna said that one of the things that they do is they have food delivered to the convention center, and then they find a place in the convention center to eat. I just want to let you know that with a lot of convention centers, and Minneapolis is one of them, that they do not allow food to come into the convention center for insurance reasons and health reasons. So if you try to do that, a lot of times their security will not let you in to do that. So we want to make sure that you're aware of that. And there's actually a really nice park right outside that we thought, oh, that'd be a really nice place, but they also own that and won't allow that. So that's part of we have full concessions going on there, working with them on that. But we want to make sure that you're aware of that, so that as they come and say you can't come in, that you know that. So two things I want to make sure that we cover. One of them is nighttime routine. How do you do, because sleep is so important to kids? Are there specific things you do with your group to make sure that they get a good night rest? So once the stadium is over, how does that night look like for you guys?
Well, we're working through we're looking through a different medium this time, because I think there are other issues that have already presented themselves. Kids have already raised that concern. I love the idea of maybe doing things we would do at the end of the evening a little bit earlier and just having a set time. I love to end the day though praying for each other. So I have a hard time right now imagining that we wouldn't do that, connecting in small groups or in room groups or as a whole group. But yeah, I think it's important for us just to make sure they know what the next day looks like, but to end in prayer and have that time together, because there's something very encouraging about the whole of the gathering, but on a personal level, being able to end it in prayer and being with their friends is a huge blessing. I don't want to let go of that.
That's good. All right, Annie.
I noticed on the schedule, and correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe I just don't remember this from the last one, that there's no nightlife in hotel rooms after the Mass Event Plus, correct?
There's not per se. There will be. We will have, depending on the hotel. If the hotels that have some of the bigger ballrooms, we will have ballrooms open for groups to hit community group, things like that, and maybe some cards and things that will be in there, some real small games, but nothing super programmed.
That was one of the things that with my group last time, we didn't do any of the nightlife because we came back into our hotel and did our community time as a big group, just hanging out in the hallway of our floor. And it was friends. Right. And it was fun. Yeah. And Shelly, I totally agree with you. I don't know what that's going to look like this year. That's new for us. And so I think that we're going to I love that idea of just maybe going into their rooms before bedtime and that they pray. When we made our covenant with my group just this past Sunday. And one of the things that some of my boys who went last time, I only have 2 of them. I only have 3 kids at all who went to the last gathering who are going to this one. They insisted that our bedtime be earlier. Because they were like, last time we got no sleep because, there was just no, the kids were talking in their room, and they're like, can we make sure that we have like a firm fist on bedtime? And I'm like, okay, what does that look like for you? Is that 1 a.m., 2 a.m.? And I said, that's something that you have to determine in your room, that with your roommates, what does that look like? And who's going to be that enforcer? It can be me. I have no problem being that person for you, but I'm not staying in your room. So, there's got to be someone in there who says, all right, lights out, get ready. And that leader. And that's actually been a really good thing for us to raise up with our student leaders, to remind them they can do that. But having that as your covenant too, is that we had said as a group, go to bed at a reasonable hour, because we recognize that rest is important. And that also means then for us as adults, that we're not holding the kids out later than we need to by just shooting the breeze or talking in the hallway for our ending time. You know what I mean? To hold each other accountable to that. So.
Yeah, I would just say as well, to not have those hotel options will probably cause a lot less stress for us, trying to decide, do we go here, do we go there, or does half the group go there? That's going to be just fine for us, I think. But we check out the Mass Event Plus, and if it's something that the kids are interested, we stick around in. I have to check myself every once in a while, because like there was, I forget who it was last year. Oh, it was Ren Collective who was at the last gathering. And I'm a big Ren Collective fan, and none of my kids knew who that was. And so I had to go back to the hotel and not watch Ren Collective. And so I think it's getting, again, we've said it a lot, but getting a pulse of your group and what they want to do. And if there's kids that need to go home and sleep, do that. But I do a breakdown of the day every night. And if it's a night where the kids are a little angsty, we try to do it quickly. And if it's a night where the kids are ready to spend a lot of time together, we do stay up a little bit later, and we hit highs and lows for sure. And we all pray together as a group before we go. So.
Great. And I know you guys have all kind of covered this. So we're gonna wrap up with this last quick question. 2 corrections I want to make sure of. One asked about convention center, and I just want to make sure you hear me correctly. There will be lots of food options in the convention center. We will have lots of food options there. So they will be able to get lunch in the convention center if that's the plan for your group. Also, lots of they have several groceries downtown. 4 different grocery places, and I know Ruth said that some of them cater and do that. You could, as Ryan says, you can call in some different food trucks and stuff that actually will work with you too. Come back in February, we're going to hear some more options that will help you with that the whole time as well. Some people talk about bringing food in their backpacks and things like that. You just have to be very careful with that, because sometimes they have the right, because you're not supposed to bring food in, they have the right to take it or to not let you into the building. So you have to be very cautious about that. Same thing with the stadium. The stadium doesn't allow you to bring food into the stadium, and they'll do backpack checks. So that's just something to be cautious of. We're working with them a little bit, saying, hey, we know we have some adults who have snack items for their kids, and it's a medical concern too, and so we're working with them on that. There'll be more information on that, but just want to make sure you know that. I want to end with this, because I think it's one of the most important times within the gathering day is the community group time, which is the time that you have with your group. And I know you've mentioned different sides of that. Can you just say maybe a couple sentences on what does community group look like for you guys? And when do you do that? Because we know people do it at different times. And Ryan, let's start with you.
So for me, this is going to change immensely this trip, because I have always had a small group, and now I'm probably closer to 25 kids plus adults. And so this is something I'm interested to see how it's going to work out. Every other year, I've been able to fit our whole group inside of one hotel room in the evening. And so I'm leaning more towards probably having kind of a small group situation like Annie had talked about, and split the kids a little bit, and then we find some way to get people together. One thing that I will do too is, which we haven't necessarily talked a lot about, but because I've been to a handful of these, I do know kind of which speakers that come back are fairly impactful. And so I might say, hey, you guys can pick 2 or 3 other sessions to go to, but we as a group are going to this speaker all together. Or specifically for me as a male, like I always require the boys to come to the XXX Church presentation, because that's always a great presentation for us to go to together as young men. So I think that we have opportunities to pick those as well, and the same. That being said, with my other female leaders, to take our females to an all-female kind of talk as well. So we try to help them pick those sessions as we have been to some of these speakers before, but we look for opportunities for us as groups to go do that, because you always get there early to speakers too, and so you end up having community time when you're 30 minutes early to a speaker. And so you have opportunities to talk to them about what was your last speaker like, what was the interest center like, and things like that as well. So
good. How about you, Shelley?
Same. I would agree with you, Ryan, completely. I think there's a couple there, and I was laughing about your Ren Collective story too. As things get announced, bands, speakers, those types of things, it is important that we remember that as leaders, we are sort of helping to give the students all of the information. So I'm a big Ren Collective fan too. So I would have been like, let's listen to this song before youth group, or hey, have you heard this band? Or here's an artist, or here's a speaker, I've heard him speak before, or she's amazing. You know, give them those chances. So sometimes there's been ones where I've said, everybody, let's go. And sometimes I've said, okay, where are you going? I love the debriefing time. I'm very relational myself, so I want the small group leaders to be relating with them. I want to relate as a whole group. Finding those times for little, big, large conversations is imperative, I think, to the gathering experience.
And Annie, before you go, I want one more chat box thing, because Nikki said that she got 23 people in her hotel room, and so I'm curious, what's the most you've gotten in a hotel room for a community group? We've never asked that question. So if you can be 23, go ahead and type that in your. It's not a challenge, but I'm just curious. Annie, go ahead.
We had 24. So I mean, 23, 24. It was tight, but it was fun. So I would say for us, I like to ask them questions, not just highs and lows, which is also really good, but also, how have you seen God at work today?
Yeah.
You know, like pointing them to how they see that God is at work throughout the whole day. Whether that's in someone else in their group, whether that's in something that was said in a session, or whether it was just the fact that there was no line for the lunch kiosk, you know, little and big. There is nothing too little that God's not active in. And so I think for us, I love asking that question. And that's one thing that I train my small group leaders on, to ask, you know, what did you hear today? But also, how did you see God at work? And then even following up and challenging them towards the next day. You know, okay, what are you going to do differently to make tomorrow better, or to make tomorrow different, or to learn something different tomorrow? At being able to ask those good questions during that community group time. I'll be honest, last time was a rough gathering for us. We did not have as much of the community group time as I would have liked. And that experience has really shifted how I lead this group coming up. And that I am insisting that they have that community group time at some point during the day. It is not something that they can just brush off and say, oh, we'll do it later. We're going to do it right now. And it's like, no, you make it a priority. It's a part of the gathering. It's a part of the experience. And so, because I found that there was a lot that were coming back, they're like, oh yeah, we never met with our small group. I'm like, what? So I think that it's really important for them to have that time. And then for us as the leader, like Shelley and Ryan both said, to walk with them through that.
So I hope you hear this over and over again. It is, every gathering is a little different for every group. And if you've been there, it shifts and changes. And I want you all to know this. We're going to end in prayer here. That next week we have about 170 planners that will be in Minneapolis, putting together some of those final details. And one of the things that we do is we pray for our adult leaders. That's why we're here, and we want to make sure that we support in whatever way we can. So know that you are being prayed for by lots and lots of different people. And then join us for next month's webinar, which we're really going to start talking about some food options and some reveals on that. That'll be fantastic. So Meredith will have some announcements on that as well. But let me pray for us real quick. Heavenly Father, God, we are so thankful for the many leaders that you have, that you've raised up to lead their youth through a great experience like the gathering. Lord, we know that your spirit will be there, and we know that you work in so many different ways. And so I pray as each group prepares, as each leader prepares, that you help them get their youth ready for this. Lord, that the joy and the excitement of this community that you've called together in Minneapolis will just continue to increase. And Lord, we continue to look ahead and anticipate the stories that will come out of this. So be with each of these leaders. And we pray as they have their meetings and their group preps and their fundraisers and all those things, that Lord, that you just continue to raise up joy in the midst of that. We ask this all in your name, may it be for you and the joy of your kingdom. Amen.